Hey, what's going on, geeks? Maximus is here, and welcome back to another Fortnite ranking live stream. Tonight, instead of picking up where we left off with our regular Fortnite streams, Fortnite ranking streams, where we've been ranking seasons for the past few weeks to months, I'm going to take a quick break from that, and instead we're going to be doing something a bit different. So if I go over to here, and while we're here on Chrome, I made my own Fortnite POI tier list. So these are all the POIs from Chapter 1 to Chapter 3. At least of the current season, that is. So here we have every single named POI that I could find. I don't think I missed any. I've even consulted the wiki a few times to ensure that I got all of them, but I think I have them all. So for the moment, we have all of the POIs down here, including some variants of them, like there is... Where is it? Like down here we have the regular OG tilted towers, right? But then over... Where is it? I know I put it in here. Where is it? I might just be blind. There it is. Top row. Here we have the tilted towers from Chapter 3, Season 2. The one that's currently in Warzone. Not to be confused with Call of Duty. Any case, I made this this tier list maker thing so we could do this tonight because I've been looking for similar tier lists for POIs, and most of them stopped like at Chapter 2 Season 5 or something like that, or were very restrictive to like a specific season. There was one for Chapter 3, but it was rank all the POIs in Chapter 3 Season 1, so obviously that's a bit more than just... I wanted to rank every single one of them, and it got kind of restrictive for that goal. So I try and true saying of if you want something done right, do it yourself. So that's why we're here. This tier list is available to you folks as well. I may link it in the description of this archive once we're done. So if you guys want to try your hand at it, feel free. Link to it will be in the description, hopefully down below, so you fill out your own tier list here and show me what you came up with. I also have pulled up here the good old Fortnite.gg map evolution, so we can easily pop between the tier list and the map to showcase each POI. So I think we're just going to go in the order that this thing has it. So first and foremost, we have Stark Industries. Now, personally, I didn't play at all during Chapter 2, Season 4. For those of you who don't know, after Endgame, I kind of went into a Marvel burnout, where honestly, I just wasn't feeling it anymore. It's not really because I felt like, there's a lot of debate on the newer phases in the MCU and whether or not they're any good. I'm not part of that debate. Personally, I'm just bored of it. I'm just kind of done with Marvel for the moment. I watched the new Doctor Strange, and I watched some of the shows. I watched WandaVision and Captain America and the Winter Soldier and a couple episodes of Moon Knight. But I just didn't really... I didn't get super invested. I liked WandaVision, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier was good too. I liked that. I've been meaning to finish Moon Knight because I did like the first episode, so I'm going to give that a chance again. because I did enjoy the first episode, so I'll probably want to see more. But nevertheless, when I heard that there was a full-on Marvel season for Fortnite, I kind of tuned out. Frankly, there's a lot of rumors that the next season is going to be another Marvel season, which I am very worried about because I'm frankly just not super interested in going through that again. But hey, I'm not the one who calls the shots. We'll see. In any case, with that long-winded exposition out the way, let's finally rank Stark Industries. Well, personally, I'm going to pull it up on the map here. I think that should be 14. Okay, so 14, 10 apparently. This weird ring got summoned in by Tony Stark apparently, and Stark Industries pops in here on the top of this weird cliff face thing with this new biome. And here it is. It's sort of like an airport with a massive runway here, a couple buildings, a couple laboratories. And from what I heard about it, it was just chaos. There was a lot of chaos. It was a highly contested spot because there was a lot of loot, including an Iron Man boss, which if you defeated him, you got his mythics. He had a unibeam as well as his repulsor cannons. And you can get that here at Stark Industries by killing a boss. And there was also a key card following the theme of previous bosses throughout Chapter 2. There was a vault hidden at Stark Industries that if you killed Iron Man, you'd get the key card for that vault, which would contain a bunch of, rare and good loot. So yeah, it was definitely a good spot to drop if you wanted loot. But again, it was highly contested because of the amount of loot it had. So if you went there, expect a fight. You would be expecting a fight. But personally, since I did not play this season at all and have absolutely zero experience with Stark Industries, I made here a cop-out. Right? This thing here is your cop-out section for like a crossover POI because, like, frankly, my thing with crossover POIs in the game is I'm not a big fan, frankly. Like, I'm sorry, but I like crossover skins and weapons are cool. And small stuff at the Imperial outpost we have now are cool. Or I think the Naruto collab had something back in Season 2, Chapter 2, Season 8. But small things like that are fine. But I think it just kind of got a bit overboard, to be honest. But because of that, as well as the fact that I have absolutely zero actual experience with the POI, other than hearsay, I'm going to throw it to the crossover POI section. I'm also going to do the same thing, go ahead and do the same thing with Doom's Domain. Because Pleasant Park, during Chapter 2, Season 4, became Doom's Domain. There was, I think in Chapter 2, Season 2, the middle section here in Pleasant Park became like an underground thing. There was an underground section where henchmen would be wandering around and would shoot at you and stuff like that. But that area reopened again for another underground. Oh yeah, there's the entrance right there. There was like a massive statue of Dr. Doom here, and where that old pavilion was. and then the gap here was where you'd get into the underground. So, essentially, there was also a Doctor Doom boss, which you killed him and got a couple of mythics. He had a similar like repulsor thing to Iron Man, and a massive sphere of death you could throw at people to destroy builds and do a bit of splash damage. The mythics in that season seemed pretty fun. I didn't play. I didn't play Chapter 2 Season 4 at all, so I never really got a chance to experience those for myself. But they seemed kind of cool, even though I was in Marvel Burnouts. But that'd be where that is. But again, similar experience to Stark Industries. I didn't play it, so I can't actually give it a high or low ranking. And I'm also going to do the same thing for Gotham. Because while I did play a few matches in Season X, when I played in Season X, the Tilted Towers was Tilted Town. So I played in Tilted Town, but I have no recollection of Gotham. Essentially, during Season X's wackiness, which we talked a bit about last stream, I should say. Yeah, that looks Gotham enough. The Tilted Towers became Gotham City for a bit, where you could get some of the new Batman themed items like Batarangs and Batman's grappling hook, which had a guaranteed glider redeploy after use. So it had 10 shots, but it had crazy range on it, as well as the glider redeploy. So it was definitely a versatile and useful tool to have. The Batarangs are kind of mediocre, but they were cool for the theme, I guess. But and it was a good place to get those, and it looked cool. But nothing can replace Tilted Towers. That's just my opinion. And whatever, it was cool. But again, I played in Season X when I played that season on the PlayStation 4. It was Tilted Town, not Gotham. So I, again, have no actual history with it. While we're on this map, because I noticed that it is coming up here. I'm going to switch this around so we can cover this one after this one. Another thing, I mentioned this in the last stream when we were actually talking about the season, but during Season X, Paradise Palms got a weird swampy redo and makeover, where parts of Moisty Mire pop back in, creating this swamp in the middle of the desert and eating Paradise Palms breakfast. Additionally, the old prison came back in the mountains. But I'm not counting the prison as part of the ranking here. The prison's its own unnamed POI. Maybe if I have the time, I'll make another tier list for the unnamed stuff. But Paradise Palms became Moisty Palms. Its gimmick was because every single one of the weird Rift POIs brought in during Season X had some strange gimmicks. Retail had zombies. Tilted had an identity crisis. Greasy Grove had taco dances. And Paradise Palms, you would turn into props every time you crouched. It could be fun. It could be funny. And a good stealth tool. Because that was the first time I think you had prop disguise in the game. I know there was like a creative game mode for prop hunt and whatnot, but this was the first time in the actual Battle Royale that the prop disguise was an actual thing. And it was kind of cool. But again, if you were in an actual fight, and you know, in most shooter games, if you crouch, you get better accuracy. So if you wanted to try to, you know, laser somebody off the top of the hotel who's wandering around the streets here, you wanted to crouch to get that better accuracy, tough luck, you're a chair now. Additionally, so that could be both a blessing and a curse, because the prop could be kind of fun. You can blend in with your surroundings and ambush people as they walk by. But at the same time, it could be annoying when you're, again, trying to get that accuracy, or in an actual fight and trying to dodge for better or trying to crouch for better accuracy, or to dodge a shot or something, and then suddenly you turn into a cactus. Additionally, in my opinion, I didn't like the aesthetic. The swamp mixed with the desert looked gross, and I liked Paradise Palms the way it was. It was one of my favorite locations. We'll talk about Paradise Palms regular in a little bit, when that pops up in the list. But Moisty Palms, first of all, what a name. Secondly, it didn't fit the vibe, in my opinion. I don't like how it looks. It looks weird. It looks gross. The swamp area mixed with the desert's kind of out of place. I'm gonna give it a D. I'm giving Moisty Palms a D. It's solely the name of a great POI. All right. Now to the first crossover POI that I will actually talk about. Chapter 3, Season 1. This is Season 2. Chapter 3, Season 1. There we go. Introduced the Daily Bugle in the middle of the volcano, old volcano. I think by... Let's get this blimp out the way. Yeah, eventually got the water in there, got bridged across. But the Daily Bugle was added to the remains of the old volcano once Chapter 3 rolled around. And it was, again, Tilted's over here. You can see the ice cubes that are some of the buildings in the city. Over here, all buried in snow. But before Tilted unthawed, this was the only city POI on the map. And as such, it was kind of a hot drop for that sake. Greasy Grove kind of functioned as another hot drop. There was there was actually a fair bit of balance across the map of where people were dropping. But the Daily Bugle was fairly contested, especially when the Spider-Man mythic arrived. Because there were like 15 or so guaranteed spawns across the city. I don't know, it had some crazy number of guaranteed spawns for the Spider-Man mythic. Which again was a pretty powerful utility with 80 shots. Lanta. So it was a great asset to have, which meant that the Daily Bugle was consistently hounded with people trying to get the item. Additionally, it had some decent loot. It being a city POI was, again, pretty contested, but also had a fair bit of places to hide, take cover. But it's geographically much smaller than Tilted. Additionally, there's water around here for some reason. I have no idea, but for some reason, the interior of the volcano is flooded now. And then by, chapter 3, season 2, there was a blimp here when Io took over the island. Then eventually the blimp went kablooey. And the water here was built over top of, making a bridge in and out of both sides of the location. Personally, I've had a lot of really bad experiences later in the game with this area, because a lot of times zone will force me into Daily Bugle zones, which can be very obnoxious, because sometimes you'll get stuck. The zone will force you sometimes here. If you didn't rotate well, too bad, you're stuck here. And if you're in no builds, there's practically no way up unless you get lucky with a lot of impulses, have a grapple glove nowadays, or figure something out. There's still spider webs around the POI you can use to bounce off of, and there's zip lines going across the top of the volcano here. So there is methods of transportation. However, it can be very frustrating because, again, the volcano gives a generous amount of high ground. So, like, if you're trying to rotate through the woods here, and there's always something going on here late game. If there's zones here, somebody always runs through here and gets into World War III over here. And then somebody also typically ends up running around on the top of the volcano, shooting down or shooting around at people rotating in or trying to move around the volcano. And because of the height advantage, they can often catch you off guard, and if you're in builds, build a decent tower up top there and be able to hold that angle effectively. It can be a literal uphill battle sometimes, and it can be kind of annoying. Additionally, I just wasn't the biggest fan of the POI. There was some cool stuff about it at first, especially with the Spider-Man stuff, but now it's that location that won't leave. That nobody wants anymore, but it's still here. Darth Vader is on the map now. Like, I'm just going to pop over to modern day map. Like, up here in the northern side of here, close to Coney Crossroads here, or somewhere around this area, close to Coney Crossroads. Over here at Sanctuary. And elsewhere on the map, there are Imperial outposts where Darth Vader will land. Darth Vader is being restricted to random campgrounds in random parts of the map. When you could have turned the volcano, the Daily Bugle, back into a volcano and built Fortress Vader. My opinion on a crossover POI would still be the same, but at least it would make sense and could lead it back to being a volcano again. But no, the Daily Bugle is still here for some reason, even though the Spider-Man crossover is long gone. At least in terms of the web shooters, one of the main reasons why people even drop there in the first place. The Prowler did have some quests there, and I think, it was the Prowler who had quests there because he was a secret skin for Chapter 3, Season 2. And so you had a couple quests to do at the Daily Bugle. I think like a moat and then spray something. Spray a Prowler, spray on a wall someplace. But again, after the web shooters left, it just became just your generic city. With only 3 buildings. Decent loot. Especially like you can also loot chests around the side here. But it is a rather underwhelming POI in my opinion. And so for that reason, I'm giving it a C. It's not terrible. I'm ready for it to change into something else. But whatever, it exists. It's a decent enough drop spot. Go with it. Next up, we have Greasy Grove. I know technically it's still Greasy Grove, but I'm classifying it differently because, in my opinion, this version is not as good. So while we're on this map, let's head over there, shall we? For some reason, this season they decided to nuke Greasy Grove. Again, first they freeze it, then they give it the Last of Us treatment. So when the reality tree sprung forth and created this magic dimension biome thing over here, I don't know what technically it is. The 0 point is doing some funky stuff again, and so it made all of this. For some reason, it also created mushrooms everywhere, which destroyed Greasy Grove. It is now a shell of its former self, a shell of its former glory. It's pretty gross. The taco restaurant has been halved. One half is suspended by mushrooms, the other half still on the ground. A lot of it's flooded. It's an apocalypse. A lot of the houses are destroyed. There's not a lot of cover. You can still get decent loot. You can hide underneath the mushrooms, the giant mushrooms. But Greasy Grove nowadays it's fine for loot. You know, still plenty of chests. There's vending machines you can use to, I believe there's a weapon one in the northern end of town. And then by the gas station, there's a mending machine. So you can always, even if you don't find a lot of loot elsewhere in the POI, there's always guaranteed stuff you can get from the vending machines if you have enough gold for it. Additionally, there's like a nice, I think, Alice in Wonderland reference. Or something like that. There's like a little tea party or something going on in the backyard of this house. With also some chests that spawn next to it. And one thing that is nice is that the bouncy slurp shrooms spawn here. So you can bounce on those to get momentum if you need to. And more importantly, gain health or shield. And you can still get some decent loot. You can also get, like, in no builds, get some solid high ground on top of the mushrooms over here. Used to, when Chapter 3 started and Greasy Grove was reintroduced, the spot would be on the top of this hill over here. There was an electrical tower that you could jump on top of with chests and fire down into Greasy Grove. And then if you killed somebody or something, or just wanting to rotate into the POI, you could jump onto a zip line that would take you down to an electrical substation in town and then go from there. Now that's gone. Been destroyed probably by these trees or something over here. And so the next big place for your high ground would probably be on top of the mushrooms on the south side of town. There are sometimes chests that spawn on top of these shrooms. And you can land on top of those, grab those, and shoot down at other people. Destroy the gas station. Cause chaos. Cause fires. But Greasy Grove is a far more open POI now. I'm calling it Greasy Groove because that's what it should have been called for this season, honestly. And going back to Greasy Grove next season or something, I don't know. But Greasy nowadays is getting far more open. It's destroyed. All the houses are open in it, so there's not too much cover in the actual town. It's a wreck. To be honest, it's a wreck. But it's not terrible. But personally, because of the legacy of Greasy Grove, for those who don't know, Greasy Grove was my drop spot and is still one of my drop spots, even despite its current condition. But because of what it's done to the place, I'm giving this a C. Next up we have the block. Oh boy. I'm going to jump over to Season 8. This was introduced late Season 7, but I'm going to focus on it Season 8 because it stomped out Risky Reels, which was over here. I'm just going to actually go back a bit. Yeah, it's right here. Back in Chapter 1, Season 7, the block flattens Risky Reels. And for like a week or so, it is literally just this square in the corner of the map. There was no chests, no loot, nothing. So if you wanted to loot while dropping at the block, you'd hit these houses, hit the tree with the guaranteed chests, hit these houses, or try your luck at Tomato Temple. And then go see what all the fuss is about over this thing. But essentially, the block's claim to fame was that it was a community-made POI. So every once in a while, Epic would pick from the community's highest-rated POI ideas, and fan-made stuff, fan-made buildings, and would then plop them onto the block so you can go check those out. These could kind of be overpowered sometimes because somebody would put guaranteed legendary chests everywhere. Somebody else put a bunch of materials that when you farm them would give you like extra mats. I don't know how that worked, but somebody managed it. People would try to cram in with as much loot as possible, and also navigating through some of these player-made stuff could be painful because sometimes people would like they'd make conceptually really cool places that if they were in like a creative map, they could be a really fun mini game or a thing to explore or something. But some of the passageways just weren't practical for an actual battle royale experience, where sometimes you just run smack dab into a wall or something, or a tunnel leading you back into zone or something like that, which wasn't all too fun. During Season 8, when the jungle biome spawned in, the block was then moved over here, eating the motel. So for some reason, they decided to destroy two of the most loved POIs, one named, one unnamed, with this thing. Again, the POIs, custom POIs weren't terrible. Some were better than others, and some were just flat out just OP. And then there was a fair share of controversy because of just how busted it could be sometimes. But then also over some of the actual content that were in the buildings. There was one castle greenlit by Epic that was put into the block, which was kind of the nail in the coffin for the POI and why it kind of got retired after Chapter 1 ended. Was that somebody put a suicide reference in the block. In this castle that was put through, in the lower level dungeon area of the castle, there was a tipped over chair with a noose hanging overhead, strongly insinuating that somebody themselves in that room. Now, Fortnite is rated T for teen, but there are plenty of children who play the game, and also plenty of people who don't want to see that. Personally, you know, it's a dark, dreary castle. It fit the theme, honestly. But I can see why Epic and others would try to snuff that out. Because, again, there are a lot of kids who play the game. And definitely didn't want to cause issues with parents, especially after all the debacle that Epic had been through with parents and complaining about Fortnite. So that incident was kind of what put the nail in the coffin for the block for the longest time. Now it's trying to make a comeback in Tilted Towers, because after the Season 2 of Chapter 3, half the city got bodied. So now they're trying to rebuild half the city with player-made buildings. However, they're being far more careful with Block 2.0 this time on what they let through, and only allowing and they're allowing the community to vote on which buildings they like the most, which is cool. But when I'm only gonna be ranking the original block, because technically Block 2.0 is just Tilted Towers, but the community gets to add their own buildings to it. But in terms of the block itself, see, it existed. Sometimes you get something good, sometimes you get something bad. Sometimes you get something controversial. Whatever the case, it existed. Moving on. Alright, so next up we got the Rave Cave. I'm going to go to the modern map for that. So, after the defeat of the Imagined Order, their headquarters, Command Cavern, got turned into Rave Cave, a location full of fun, parties, and excitement. With lots of fireworks, full-on roller coaster, going around the mountain, and ballers, as well as a bunch of slurp kegs and or slurp barrels and trucks. And there's one located underneath the little lip of the entrance here, and then one at the in the garage area back here. You can land inside of the Cuddle Team Leader's head, and there's chests up there. You can also grab a baller and use that to rotate around or hop onto the roller coaster and ride around. Additionally, there are slipstreams again, just orbiting around, just which would take you in an orbit around the snow biome. It's pretty decent rotation around this area and can get you a nice boost to get you elsewhere. Additionally, you got the ballers again, so those are useful vehicles for effective transportation. The loot is solid. Again, its predecessor POIs were known for having good loot. And Rave Cave, I think it has a little bit less, but it's still a solid place to loot up. One issue I do have with the place is that if you don't have visualized sound effects turned on or visualized audio turned on, you're going to have some problems dealing with other players, because you are constantly, when you're in Rave Cave, you're constantly being assaulted by blasting music at all times, which makes it very hard to hear footsteps around you or gunshots. Because what also doesn't help is that alongside music, fireworks go off in there every now and again. Which now with the firework flare gun being in the game, you need to take a minute to figure out, are these fireworks from the flare gun or is this just an ambient effect from the location? It can definitely get kind of confusing when you're trying to just mind your own business and play the game. Personally, like, that part of it kind of detracts from the overall experience for me, because again, it can be very obnoxious to be just, doing your own thing and just someone creeps up behind you and you didn't even hear him because of the blasting rave music. Which, I get that's the name of the place, so I should expect rave music at a place called Rave Cave, but maybe turn it down just a little bit. Because otherwise it gets very, very tedious. Lanza. Additionally, there is still a vault at the Rave Cave. However, unlike previous seasons, where you had to, get a key card to unlock the vault, this time it functions similarly to the 7 vaults, where you just need a certain amount of players to gather around a scanner, and then the door opens for you. The loot in there in the Rave Cave vault is less than the Command Cavern vault or the Covert Cavern vault, but it's still solid. You can still get some decent loot out of there, but it's definitely not as good as it used to be. Although, again, there's still plenty of loot to have around the place. In the middle of the POI, there's a grapple glove. There are grapple glove boxes you can open up and get grapple gloves. So alongside the ballers, slipstreams, you also get the grapple gloves for easy rotations around. Overall, Rave Cave is pretty solid. I'm going to give it a B. I honestly prefer its IO counterparts, simply because I kind of like the aesthetic a bit more, and they had better loot, and they also didn't have the stupidly loud music, so I can actually hear myself think. But still, it's solid, especially with all the rotation options you have there. And now we're getting something really OG. Next up, we got Anarchy Acres. This was added at the very start of the game. For some reason, Chapter 1, for a good bit, had 2 farm locations. Fatal Fields in the south and Anarchy Acres in the north. Personally, I preferred Fatal Fields to its counterpart because I like the layout a bit better. And also because it was typically closer to the middle of the map, so you can just rotate in a bit easier from Fatal than you could from Anarchy. But Anarchy Acres, nonetheless, was a location that existed. It had meh loot. It existed. You could find loot there. It wasn't anything to write home about, though. If I'm to, like, in Season 3, late Season 3, just like everywhere else on the map, I do have one specific memory of Anarchy Acres in specific. It was a few days before Season 3 ended. A friend and I had dropped to Anarchy Acres for, I think, a challenge. And while we were there, we stopped in the farmhouse to look at the TV because this was at the time where the meteor was getting closer and closer to touching down, and at the end of matches, smaller asteroids would fall around the map and could break builds and damage people and stuff like that. But in any case, there were warning signs on all the TVs across the map. And I remember walking into the farmhouse up at Anarchy Acres with my friend, and the two of us looking at the warning signal on the TV. Additionally, after the... I don't know if it's visible here or not. I think it was like here-ish. That might be what it is right there. Let me see. Okay, I don't think it's visible from the actual map. But around one of these farms after the rocket launch event, one of the boosters from the rocket landed here at Anarchy Acres. There was also a bug that happened like a couple days before the event where the crater from where the booster was supposed to land would appear prematurely for players, which gave people a heads up that, oh, something's about to happen here at Anarchy Acres. And a few days later when the rocket launch happened, the booster is jettisoned from the rocket itself and then crash lands here at Anarchy Acres. So, yeah, that's most of my memories with Anarchy Acres. It was kind of... Again, we didn't really need 2 farms. 2 farm locations that weren't too terribly different from one another. Like even like Fatal got favored during Season 4 because you got a meteor crash here, which gave hop rocks. The closest one to the closest one of those crash sites from Anarchy would be over at Risky Reels. Or maybe if you wanted to go the distance, the one close to Junction. So even Epic was favoring Fatal Fields over Anarchy Acres with the hop rocks. But personally, even though it's OG and whatnot, it still was a location that just kind of existed. I'm giving it a D. We didn't need 2 of them, and Anarchy was not my favorite. I'm actually going to save this version of Tilted until when we talk about actual Tilted. So moving that downstairs for the moment. Alright, so next up we got Holly Hatchery. A weird POI. So during Chapter 2, Season 7... Does it... Yes, there we go. So later in Chapter 2, Season 7, Holly Hedges got an alien makeover. Several of the buildings here, this one in the corner, the center building here, and then a couple more on the, I think actually all of them, were covered in alien nanites, which gave a zero gravity field around them. You could jump around, pulse jump around inside the zero gravity. Audio was weird, so you can sneak up on people easily. It was slightly muted a little bit, so it was a lot quieter. And alien parasites had a high chance of spawning inside the main central building in the center. Additionally, trespasser NPCs roamed the streets and would shoot you on sight. And it is also at this time, I think, Holly Hedges, or now Holly Hatchery, got removed from the alien invasion, the UFO alien invasion, many events, because this area was already invaded by aliens. But the loot here was kind of the same as its original counterpart. You just had some more alien tech around the place and the nanite fields around each of the houses. Which again, I streamed some of my gameplay here at Holly Hatchery. And the zero gravity field for the nanites was honestly really underrated. You could, again, it was solid mobility. You'd move a bit slower, sure, but if you could get the hang of it, you could really outmaneuver people, and it was really fun. And you could build anywhere in the zero gravity field. The buildings didn't have to be connected to anything, and you could literally build while suspended in the air. It was pretty cool. And then the alien nanite item got added around the same time. They were of the common rarity, but for some reason, for like the first week of them being in the game, they were stupidly hard to find, despite, again, their, quote, common rarity. It was definitely an interesting POI change. Not one that I foresaw happening, but not one that really, like, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I thought the nanites were cool, though, so I did have fun with the changes. But again, in terms of, like, practicality and loot and whatnot, not much really changed from Holly Hedges to Holly Hatchery, other than the name and the nanites. Everything else was pretty much the same. Although again, you did have to deal with parasites and the laser beams from trespassers. I'm gonna give Holly Hatchery a C. It was fun, but it didn't really do a lot. Next up, we got Junction. And I think my voice is starting to go, which I really hate. Because I want to make a video tonight too. But my voice is starting to die on me. I don't know why. So I might cut this one short after we do Junction. So Junction was first introduced in Chapter 1, Season 2, along with a lot of the POIs on this side of the map. It's exactly what it sounds like. It is a junkyard. It was a good spot to farm metal and had a lot of ground loot. However, it didn't have too terribly many chests, but it did also have a llama, a large metal llama, on the hilltop here overlooking the location. That had a chest in it, and one of the more interesting things about, like, there was a metal llama up here, there was a crab or something over here in Moisty Mire. One of the more interesting things about those structures, oh yeah, there's the llama right there, is that you could edit them. They were buildings made from the regular in-game materials, and they were free to edit. Nowadays, if something like that existed in the game now, the sweats would be going crazy. But back in the day, nobody knew how to edit, so it was just kind of like, oh, that's a cool thing you can do. But in any case, loot at Junction, it existed. It wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't terrible. It definitely, though, because of how far out it was in the zone, you would rarely have a zone that was close to Junction. You'd have to rotate quite a bit to get down to wherever the zone would put you. And back in the days, like this version of Junction is Season 3. So there weren't too many mobility items in the game back in those times to make rotations from this far out location easier. So you'd have a hike ahead of you before you'd be able to get back into the safe circle. Loot, again, nothing to write home about. You could get lucky, and again, you could also rotate over to like there's like a little warehouse thing up here. You can see it better. Let's jump to Season 4. There was a warehouse that was built out here. Makes it easy. You can loot Junction, head over here, check the warehouse out. Starry Suburbs over here. Hadn't been named yet, but in about like 6 seasons from this current one, this will become Starry Suburbs. But there was some loot in this ruined neighborhood you could loot. Then moved on to Pleasant or anywhere else you wanted to go. You would rarely be contested at Junction. Ordinarily, you have like 1 or 2 people landing in the junkyard itself, and then somebody else heading up to either to the warehouse or the llama. Luke the Notable did 100 drops at Junction and showcased a lot of its strengths and weaknesses. I'd highly recommend you guys go check that out if you are interested in seeing some good old gameplay of Junction and a more competitive look at the location's viability. Personally, I didn't really like it all that much. I didn't go there often. I'm giving it a C. Yeah, I'm sticking with that. I'm giving it a C. But because my voice is being weird right now, I think we are going to actually end the stream here. I want to rest my voice for a little bit, get it back, and then work on a video later tonight. So that is what I aim to do. But thank you all for watching this video or this stream. Thanks for tuning in. And I'll add this to the list of active stream series. We're still doing the seasons. We're still ranking the seasons. And then also we'll add the ranking POIs to that list of streaming series. But in any case, thank you all for tuning in.